The first thing 14-year-old Micah Cole found beneath the horse trailer floor was not treasure. It was a white curve painted across dark blue aluminum, 12 inches wide, buried under rubber matting and 60 years of dirt. "Dad," he said, "horses don't need race numbers." Raymond Cole lowered the pry bar and looked through the open rear door. The trailer had cost him $450 at an estate sale that morning. Its white paint had yellowed. The rear ramp was bent, one taillight hung by its wire, and the inside smelled of hay, old oil, and damp rubber. Valerie Wynn, chief executive of the estate company, had called it a rusted box for animals, and asked Raymond whether he planned to make his son live in it. Now a piece of the floor was lifted, and a dark blue layer showed beneath the white. The curved white stripe continued under the next section of mat. Raymond knelt beside his son. He was 60 years old, broad through the hands and narrow through the shoulders after 4 decades of sheet metal work. He ran Cole Mobile Fabrication from a rented building outside Akron, Ohio. Most days he repaired food service trailers, race haulers, and municipal equipment. He knew how factory tie-downs were installed, how livestock floors were drained, and how aluminum carried old stress. The fittings beneath the mat were not placed for animals. 4 recessed rings formed a rectangle narrow enough for a race car. Each ring was backed by an internal plate riveted to the frame. No farmer added reinforcement that carefully to keep a horse standing. Raymond checked his watch. It was 12:42. The estate sale contract required all purchased equipment removed by 4. Valerie's crew was already pushing unsold machinery toward a scrap line. "Photograph it before we lift anything else," he said. Micah took pictures of the mat, the exposed paint, the rings, the warped ramp, and the lot number chalked on the door. Raymond called the sale manager and asked him to witness the condition before loading. The man arrived annoyed, then stopped when he saw the painted curve. Valerie came 5 minutes later with her attorney. She was 48, dressed for a donor luncheon rather than a farmyard, and carrying the controlled impatience of someone whose schedule had been rearranged by an object she had already dismissed. "What did you do to it?" she asked. Raymond stood, removed 2 screws and lifted a rotten mat. Her attorney examined the sale invoice. It described Lot 83 as a 1950s aluminum agricultural horse trailer, as is, complete. The amount was paid. The serial plate was listed as painted over and unreadable. Valerie looked at the blue paint. That wasn't visible during inspection. Micah turned his phone toward her. In the estate listing photograph, one corner of the mat had curled upward. The same white curve showed beneath it, small but clear. "It was visible," Raymond said. Nobody asked what it was. Valerie's eyes moved from the photograph to the trailer. "Load it and leave." Raymond did exactly that. By 3:10, the old trailer was chained to his flatbed, its title packet locked in his truck, and every side recorded on video. Valerie stood beside the estate barn as he pulled through the gate. She did not laugh this time. Raymond had bought the trailer for practical reasons. Cole Mobile Fabrication needed a covered unit for aluminum stock and portable welding equipment. A new one cost more than $12,000. His landlord had given him 60 days to stop storing material along the rear fence. If Raymond could straighten the ramp, seal the roof, and build racks inside, the $450 trailer would solve a real problem. The shop had started as a side job in Raymond's garage when he was 36. He spent his days forming stainless panels at a commercial body plant, and his evenings repairing concessions trailers for county fairs. Ellen kept the invoices, collected payments from men who suddenly forgot prices after the work was finished, and made sure Raymond did not promise 3 Tuesday jobs on the same Tuesday. When the body plant closed, the side job became their living. Raymond knew structures better than engines. He could identify a rushed repair by the way a rivet head sat against a panel. He understood why aluminum cracked beside a weld instead of through it, how a load moved when a ramp flexed, and which old sealants remained soft after heat. That competence was specific. It did not make him a racing historian, an appraiser, or an attorney. Whenever people later described him as the man who knew what the trailer was at first sight, they improved the story and reduced the truth. At first sight, he had seen a cheap enclosed shell with enough straight frame to be useful. Valerie's reasons for selling were equally practical. The estate belonged to Charles Weller, an industrial equipment distributor who died at 89. His will divided cash among 5 grandchildren and donated the main automobile collection to a university. The farm property held 40 years of uncatalogued equipment that did not fit either category. Wynn Estate Services had 90 days to inventory, sell, or dispose of it before insurance and property costs began reducing the distributions. Valerie had assigned 12 appraisers across machinery, furnishings, vehicles, and records. The horse trailer sat behind a barn beside 2 manure spreaders and a damaged livestock chute. An agricultural contractor identified it as a home-modified 50s unit with no safe commercial use. That opinion was reasonable from the exterior. The failure came afterward. No one lifted the loose mat, read the reversed plate, or compared the reinforced floor with the stated function. Speed had converted a reasonable first impression into a final conclusion. Raymond understood that kind of mistake because he had made smaller versions of it. A year earlier, he quoted a low price to straighten a mobile kitchen frame, then discovered hidden stainless cabinets tied into the damaged rail. He honored the quote and lost a week's profit. Ellen would have called it tuition, the money a person paid to remember a lesson. What bothered Raymond was not that Valerie's team had been wrong. It was that she had turned the error into a joke about the person willing to look again. It also gave Micah something to work on with him during summer break. Since Raymond's wife Ellen died 4 years earlier, father and son had become good at sharing rooms and bad at sharing what was inside them. Micah could discuss a broken hinge for 20 minutes. Ask how school felt without his mother at the spring concert, and he became suddenly interested in a socket drawer. Metal gave them a language that did not require either of them to begin with grief. At the shop, Raymond parked the trailer in the clean bay and did not touch the remaining floor. He called Ruthie Sloan, a commercial photographer who documented restoration projects for insurance companies. He paid her to make a complete visual record before further work. He also took paint flakes from loose edges, placed them in separate envelopes, and marked their locations. Micah crawled beneath the chassis with a light. There are more rings underneath. Raymond joined him. Along both rails were mounts for removable loading ramps. The spacing matched the wheelbase of a low sports car, not agricultural equipment. Near the front, a steel crossmember carried a shallow, crescent-shaped dent that had been repaired from above. The repair used a row of closely spaced aircraft rivets. Factory, Micah asked. Not for a horse trailer. They worked until 7, removing the rubber in numbered sections. More of the white curve appeared. Then a straight white line. By measuring the radius, Micah estimated the original marking had been a 2-digit number painted across the floor and lower wall before someone covered the interior in gray farm coating. They did not know the digits yet. The next morning, Raymond removed the bent hinge cover from the left rear door. Behind it sat a narrow brass plate turned inward against the frame. The visible side carried 4 stamped characters: H, T, 5, and 7. 2 original rivets held it in place. Someone had reversed the plate rather than discard it. Raymond searched manufacturer records and found nothing under those letters. He searched photographs of 50s horse trailers and found dozens with similar shapes but none with the same roof vents, recessed rings, or double-skinned lower walls. Micah searched racing transporters. At 10:16, he turned his laptop around. A black and white photograph showed a dark transporter parked behind a low prototype race car at a European circuit. The trailer roofline, 3 side ribs, and rear hinges resembled theirs. Painted across the open ramp was a white number 27. The caption identified the car as the Arden GT-1, an American-built prototype that finished at Le Mans in 1958 after surviving a gearbox failure and a night collision. The car belonged to the Great Lakes Museum of Racing. Its original transporter was listed as lost. Raymond compared the photograph with Ruthie's image. The hinge positions looked close. So did the repaired crescent in the crossmember, visible as a dark distortion beneath the ramp. But old trailers shared shapes, photographs flattened distance, and people saw what they wanted when a valuable name appeared. "We don't have a Le Mans transporter," Raymond said. "We have a trailer with questions." Micah looked disappointed but nodded. They created 3 lists on the shop wall: what they observed, what records said, and what they inferred. The blue paint was observed. The museum's missing transporter was recorded. A match was inference. Raymond would not let those categories slide together. Micah found that rule harder than he admitted. By afternoon, he had already drafted a message to a racing forum with the subject line, "Lost Arden hauler found in Ohio." Raymond made him delete it before posting. "Somebody there might know something," Micah said. "Or somebody might know exactly what answer we want and give it to us. So, we don't ask anyone? We ask narrow questions." They sent the museum 5 images without the auction price, estate dispute, or race number theory. Their email asked whether the museum held dimensional drawings or clear rear photographs of the Arden transporter. It did not ask whether the object was authentic. The assistant curator replied that the museum had no factory drawing, but its archive held a customs carnet listing exterior dimensions for the 1,958 trip. Raymond's trailer was 3/4 of an inch longer and 1/2 an inch lower. At first, the mismatch looked damaging. Then Raymond measured the bent ramp and sagged roof. When supported at original points, the roof rose 1/2 an inch. The rear door had stretched the body almost exactly 3/4 of an inch after years of pulling against a twisted hinge. A deformation survey could explain the difference, but explanation was not proof. He added it to the inference column. Micah began to appreciate how a case grew. A clue did not become stronger because they liked it. It became stronger when an alternative explanation failed. They tested the floor rings against 3 possibilities. Livestock restraints would align along walls and use smooth fittings that could not cut an animal. Cargo rings would distribute across the floor. These 4 matched the track width and wheelbase of the Arden prototype, as listed in the museum catalog. The backing plates also angled loads forward, the direction a car would pull during braking. Raymond made cardboard templates of the ring positions and laid them over a scaled drawing of the prototype. All 4 tires centered within an inch. "Can that go in observed?" Micah asked. "The measurements can. What they mean stays in inference." The boy wrote each number carefully. He had never liked math at school because the answer disappeared after grading. Here, 1 inch changed what a piece of metal had been built to carry. That discipline became important sooner than he expected. Valerie Wynn called before lunch. She said the estate had discovered an error in the lot description. The trailer had been conveyed for agricultural use only, and the company intended to cancel the title transfer until the intended limitation could be added. Raymond read the invoice again. "There's no use restriction. The description says agricultural. That describes what your company thought it was. It defines what we sold." Raymond asked her to put the claim in writing. Then he called Martin Hale, an attorney who handled equipment titles and estate disputes. Martin examined the paid invoice, the state title, the listing, and the removal video. "Agricultural use isn't a detachable ownership right," Martin said. "They sold a complete titled trailer. They can argue mistake. They can't invent a reservation after delivery. What do I do? Preserve it. Don't restore it. Don't advertise it. And don't tell anyone it went to Le Mans until someone qualified can prove that." Raymond canceled the storage conversion. The decision created an immediate problem. His landlord's deadline still ran. He rented a steel container for 6 months and paid $2,400 in advance, money he had set aside for Micah's fall dental work and a shop compressor. The trailer had stopped being cheap. That afternoon, Valerie's written notice arrived. It claimed the estate had sold only the livestock conversion and associated use value, not any underlying motorsport provenance. It demanded an inspection within 48 hours. Martin answered with access conditions. The estate could inspect under camera, but no panel, paint, fastener, or floor section could be removed. Both parties would receive copies of every image and test. Valerie agreed. She arrived with a vehicle appraiser named Colin Rush and 2 estate employees. Colin began by calling the trailer a common farm conversion. Raymond showed him the reversed plate, the tie-down backing plates, and the paint sequence. Colin scraped one loose edge with his thumbnail before Ruthie stopped him. "No unrecorded sampling," she said. Valerie looked irritated. "It belongs to my estate." "That is exactly what is disputed," Martin said. Micah stood beside the evidence table, entering each person's time of arrival. Raymond saw Valerie notice him. "You have your son doing legal paperwork?" "He found the number. He can record a clock." Colin measured the frame and photographed the plate. He argued that a farmer could have bought surplus racing equipment and modified it, making the current object a horse trailer even if some parts were older. That was a credible point. Historical identity was not automatically preserved through alteration. Raymond accepted the criticism. "Then we test whether the alterations sit on top of one original structure." He proposed a joint examination by the Great Lakes Museum of Racing. Valerie refused. The museum already owned the Arden prototype and had an interest in declaring a match. Martin suggested an independent transportation conservator chosen from 3 names. Valerie selected Dr. Sandra Keene, who had authenticated aircraft trailers, military transport bodies, and early race haulers. Sandra required a paint stratigraphy study, rivet mapping, alloy testing, and complete access to pre-sale photographs. The estate had photographed the trailer 6 weeks before the auction. Valerie's company produced 14 images. One showed the curled floor mat and white paint. Another showed the reversed brass plate behind the loose hinge cover. A third, taken through the front vent, captured 4 recessed tie-downs before Raymond touched the trailer. The photographs protected him from the claim that he created the clues. They also proved the estate had possessed the information without recognizing it. Sandra began with the shell. The aluminum alloy in the side panels matched batches used by a Cleveland specialty body company in the mid-1950s. The aircraft rivets were original to the structure, not later repair stock. Beneath the white exterior paint sat dark blue, and beneath that sat gray zinc primer. The same layers continued under the livestock vents, proving the vents had been cut after the blue period. The examination lasted 5 days, not the single afternoon Valerie expected. Sandra divided the trailer into zones and assigned every visible change a probable period. Original construction included the shell, frame, roof ribs, tie-down backing, and ramp guides. The racing period added the white number and at least 2 quick repairs. The agricultural conversion added vents, rubber, wall coating, a partition frame, and external white paint. Later, farm repairs added galvanized bolts where rivets had loosened. This sequence mattered because historical artifacts often survived by being useful. The trailer had not been protected in a collection. It had carried calves, feed bags, fencing, and a small tractor. Those jobs covered the blue paint and kept the body from being scrapped. Valerie visited on the 3rd day. She watched Sandra study a patch of white paint under magnification. If the farm conversion saved it, why isn't it still a horse trailer? She asked. Sandra answered without looking up, because identity and use aren't the same question. A courthouse can become a store and remain the same building. We determine which structure continued and which features changed. And if most visible features changed, then we describe that honestly. Valerie had expected authentication to be a switch, original or fake, valuable or worthless. Sandra treated it as a layered account. That made a quick legal position harder to maintain. She mapped 312 visible rivets. In the 1958 Le Mans paddock photographs, 87 could be seen clearly enough for comparison. 85 occupied matching positions. One missing rivet corresponded to a later farm vent. The other sat where the rear hinge had been repaired. Strong, Sandra said. Not final. The number beneath the floor remained partly covered. Removing the rubber risked pulling original paint with it. Sandra used low heat, a lifting membrane, and hours of patient separation. Raymond and Micah watched through the observation window. At the end of the day, the complete white number emerged, 27. The room felt smaller after that. Micah pressed both hands against the glass but said nothing. Sandra photographed the number and immediately covered it with conservation tissue. She did not allow the reveal to become a celebration. Numbers can be repainted, she said. We still need continuity. The museum supplied high-resolution archive photographs without offering an opinion. In one image, taken after the 1958 night session, the transporter's left rear corner carried a triangular repair scar where a support truck had backed into it. Raymond's trailer carried the same patch, with 11 perimeter rivets and one misplaced 12th rivet near the bottom. In another photograph, a mechanic stood on the ramp beside the Arden prototype. His boot covered part of the white number, but behind him the inner wall showed 3 faint names written in grease pencil. The names were unreadable. Micah found them 2 days later. He was cleaning loose hay from a cavity behind the right wall, using a soft brush and low suction. His light caught a dark line beneath gray overspray. Sandra authorized a small solvent window. Letter by letter, 3 names appeared: Frank Dyer, Luis Ortega, and Samuel Boone. Beside each name was a date from June 1958. Raymond knew enough to stop. Names changed the work. They were no longer matching anonymous metal to a famous car. They were handling the record of people. The museum's current Arden display named the 2 drivers, the team owner, and the designer. It did not name Frank, Luis, or Samuel. Sandra searched payroll records and found all 3 on Arden Engineering's travel roster. Frank was listed as transporter driver and welder. Luis handled fuel and brakes. Samuel was an engine mechanic. None had received a photograph credit or formal team biography. The trailer had carried their work to Le Mans, and its wall carried the only known place where all three had signed together. Valerie's position hardened after Sandra's preliminary report. Her company filed a petition in probate court asking to rescind the sale before the estate distributed funds. The petition claimed a mutual mistake over an asset that might exceed $1 million. Raymond's customers saw the court filing online. One restaurant chain manager delayed a fabrication order because he did not want equipment tied to a disputed asset. The shop lost $12,000 of scheduled work. Martin explained that Raymond could settle quickly. Valerie offered $85,000, repayment of every conservation cost, and a written statement that he had acted properly. For a $450 purchase, the offer was substantial. Raymond asked what would happen to the trailer. The estate intended to send it to a high-end restoration company. The company's proposal called for replacing corroded lower panels, repainting the exterior in flawless blue, rebuilding the floor, and removing farm alterations until the transporter looked as it might have in 1958. "What about the names?" Micah asked. Valerie's attorney said they would be photographed and reproduced on a display panel. "Reproduced isn't preserved," Raymond said. The lower interior wall carrying the names had oil stains, boot scuffs, and a shallow dent. A perfect restoration would make the trailer easier to display and less truthful. Raymond declined the offer. Valerie came to the shop after the decision. "You're refusing $85,000 because of writing on a wall. I'm refusing your plan to remove the wall. The museum could display the names better on a clean panel. Those men didn't write on a clean panel." Valerie's accurate criticism was that Raymond had no museum, no climate-controlled building, and no financial capacity to conserve a fragile international artifact indefinitely. Pride could damage the trailer as surely as a careless restoration. Raymond accepted that too. He proposed placing the trailer in temporary custody with Sandra's conservation facility while ownership proceeded. He would surrender physical control but not title. The move cost him access to the trailer he had planned to build with his son. Micah resisted. "What if they don't give it back? Then Martin earns his fee." "That's not an answer." Raymond looked at the trailer in the bay. "Keeping it here because I'm afraid would make us the danger." Micah helped wrap the exposed number and secure every door. When the conservation truck left, the clean bay looked larger and emptier than before. Father and son stood at the threshold until its taillights turned at the end of the street. The probate hearing occurred 9 days later. Valerie's attorney argued mistake and disproportionate value. Martin presented the invoice, title transfer, pre-sale photographs, and Sandra's process log. He emphasized that Raymond had neither concealed information nor altered the object. He had invited joint inspection within a day. The judge did not decide final historical identity. She ruled that the paid, complete trailer sale remained valid while the case continued. The estate could not cancel title administratively. She also ordered both sides to preserve the trailer and exchange records. The ruling kept Raymond's ownership alive, but it did not end the pressure. Legal fees reached $19,000. He delayed replacing the shop compressor. The rented storage container leaked. Micah's dental appointment had to be moved to a payment plan. The shop compressor failed on a Wednesday morning, while Raymond's crew was finishing a mobile bakery for a customer with a Friday opening. Renting one large enough cost $600 a day. Buying a replacement cost $11,000. Raymond used 2 small portable units in alternating cycles and moved the heaviest forming work to a friendly shop at night. For 3 days, he slept in 2-hour sections. The bakery opened on time, but Raymond miscut an aluminum sheet after reading the scale backward. It was a simple error he had not made in years. The wasted panel cost $700. Ben Carver, his senior fabricator, took the measuring tape from his hand. "Go home. We have a roof seam left. I have a roof seam left." Raymond started to argue and heard exhaustion in his own voice. Valerie had been right about one thing. Possession did not make him capable of doing every part safely. He went home, slept 9 hours, and returned with a new rule. No one, including the owner, worked precision equipment after 16 hours. The trailer dispute had become a lesson in limits. Preserving history while damaging current work would not honor any mechanic. At school, Micah faced a different cost. A short video from the estate sale had circulated among classmates. Someone edited Valerie's joke beside photographs of expensive Le Mans cars and called Micah trailer millionaire. He stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. Raymond learned about it from the guidance counselor, not from his son. His first instinct was to call the school and demand names. Instead, he waited until Micah joined him in the shop that evening. You don't have to defend a valuation we don't have, Raymond said. Micah kept sorting rivets. I didn't tell them it was worth $1 million. I know. They think we're already rich. Raymond looked around the shop at the borrowed compressor hose and leaking container outside. Then they aren't inspecting the evidence. It was not enough, and he knew it. He asked Micah whether he wanted the video addressed formally. The boy said no. He wanted one photograph he could show his history teacher. The 3 names on the wall, with no dollar amount. Sandra provided a conservation copy. The teacher built a lesson around unnamed workers in famous events. For the first time, Micah's classmates discussed the trailer without beginning with price. The cruelty did not vanish, but its easiest version lost force. One evening, Raymond found his son sitting inside the steel container between racks of aluminum stock. Micah had the 1,958 paddock photograph on his phone. If we sold it back, we'd be done, the boy said. Yes. I'm the one who found the number. You are. So maybe I should get a vote. Raymond sat on a coil of cable. You should. Micah studied the photograph. I don't want them to make it new. That answer changed Raymond's next decision. He had been treating preservation as his boundary, and the financial cost as his alone. Micah had earned a voice through the work. Raymond asked what he did want. The boy pointed to the 3 faint names. I want to know who they were. They stopped spending every free hour on ownership and began documenting the crew. Frank Dyer had died in 1994. His daughter, Anne, lived in Toledo and kept 2 boxes from his racing years. Luis Ortega had raised 4 sons in Cleveland after leaving motorsports. His youngest son, Gabriel, still owned the small brake shop Luis opened in 1962. Samuel Boone had no children, but a nephew had donated his tools to a vocational school. Raymond contacted each family through letters that included no claim about value and no request for ownership. He asked only whether they had records of the transporter. Ann Dyer replied with a photograph of her father standing beside the damaged left rear corner. He held a pneumatic riveter. The triangular patch was new, and the misplaced 12th rivet already sat below the line. Anne also sent a 6-page letter Frank wrote to his wife from France. Most of it concerned ordinary matters: food prices, a leaking hotel sink, and whether their daughter's bicycle had been repaired. One paragraph described the night before the race. Frank had slept for 40 minutes inside the transporter because the team owner gave the available rooms to drivers and sponsors. Luis woke him when the ramp cable frayed. The 3 mechanics replaced it under a work lamp, then loaded the car before dawn. That cable still there? Anne asked during a video call. Sandra examined the ramp drum. The original cable had been replaced during farm use, but beneath the drum she found a short, seized end held by a hand-shaped clamp. Anne recognized the clamp in another photograph because Frank made its rounded corner to keep it from cutting his palm. The detail added little to market value. It added a night to the story. Gabriel Ortega brought a pocket notebook to Sandra's facility. On a page dated the 12th of June 1958, Luis had written, "Repainted ramp 27 after fuel spill. Sam says blue never dries in France." The handwriting matched the name beneath the gray overspray. Gabriel remembered his father complaining whenever museums called racing glamorous. Luis said glamour was what spectators saw after someone spent 6 hours removing brake dust. He kept the Le Mans notebook not because the race was famous, but because it contained the first brake temperature table he trusted. Raymond asked permission to digitize the table for the exhibit. Gabriel agreed if the museum explained what the numbers meant. Samuel's vocational school invited Micah to help inventory the donated tools. Each tool had a stamped S, B, and a red paint stripe. In the transporter photographs, the same striped wrenches lay on a shelf above the signed wall. One socket carried a ground flat side used to reach a gearbox nut on the Arden prototype. The vocational school opened Samuel's donated tool chest. Inside the lid was a clipped photograph of the Arden team loading the prototype. On the back, Samuel had written, "Frank's trailer got us there. Luis got us stopped. I just kept the engine arguing." None of those records had been in the museum archive. The trailer had led to them because Micah asked about the people rather than the price. Sandra added the family evidence to her report. She still needed one final test. The brass plate, marked HT57, might identify the bodybuilder. Company records were incomplete, but an industrial archive held a 1,956 order ledger from Hartwell Transport Works. Entry 57 described a custom enclosed transporter for Arden Engineering, with double lower walls, 4 floor restraints, removable loading ramps, and dark blue finish. The listed dimensions matched within 1/8 of an inch. The ledger also noted hinge plate reversed after delivery adjustment. Hartwell had mounted the plate inward to clear the widened rear door. What looked like concealment had been an original correction. Sandra completed her conclusion. Raymond's trailer was the surviving original transporter built for the Arden GT-1 and used during its 1958 Le Mans campaign. The agricultural conversion altered vents, ramp covering, and paint but preserved the primary shell, frame, tie-down system, race number, repair scars, and crew inscriptions. The Great Lakes Museum asked to host a public conservation review beside the Arden prototype. Valerie objected to a public event during litigation. The judge allowed it because Sandra controlled transport and both sides could attend. No sale, restoration, or engine operation was involved. The review took place in the museum's main hall 6 weeks later. The Arden GT-1 sat under bright lights in perfect silver paint, its body smooth and complete. 20 feet away, the transporter looked tired. Its white farm coating peeled at the corners. The ramp remained bent. Gray rubber still covered part of the floor. A small conservation window revealed the number 27 beneath. Visitors first looked at the race car. Then they followed the matching number to the trailer. Sandra presented the evidence without drama. She showed the Hartwell order, alloy results, paint layers, 85 matching rivets, the triangular repair with its misplaced 12th rivet, the grease pencil names, and the 3 family records. A digital overlay placed the 1,958 photograph over the current trailer. Hinge, vent frame, roof seam, and patch aligned. She then showed what did not match. The roof had 2 farm vents. A livestock divider left 16 holes in the inner rails. The white exterior coating covered most of the dark blue. 1 loading ramp guide had been shortened. The audience needed those facts because authentication based only on matches would be advocacy. Colin used the differences to argue that the transporter had lost historical integrity. Sandra answered with thresholds used in industrial conservation, continuity of primary structure, documented transformation, recoverable significant surfaces, and direct provenance. The trailer met each threshold. Its alterations did not create a copy. They recorded the way the original survived. An insurer on the museum panel asked whether replacing the signed wall would raise or lower value. Sandra said a new wall might improve appearance and reduce historical significance. The marks were not decoration transferable to fresh aluminum. Their location, layers, and relation to the work area created meaning. Valerie's appraiser, Colin, received time to state the counterargument. He said agricultural conversion had changed the trailer's function and removed some original material. Sandra agreed. She explained that conservation did not require pretending those decades had not happened. The farm years were part of the object's chain, not contamination to erase. Then the museum director uncovered a revised display panel. The old panel began with the drivers. The new one began with the journey, transported, prepared, and kept in competition by Frank Dyer, Luis Ortega, Samuel Boone, and the Arden crew. Below were the drivers, owner, designer, and race result. Families of all 3 mechanics stood near the trailer. Gabriel Ortega touched his father's grease pencil name through the protective barrier. Ann Dyer compared the triangular patch with the photograph in her hands. Students from Samuel's vocational school placed his old wrench in a temporary case. The proof had produced a consequence before any money changed hands. The museum corrected its history. After the presentation, the estate's probate fiduciary met with Valerie, Martin, and Raymond in a side room. The fiduciary had reviewed the sale process. Wynn Estate Services had photographed the visible race number, misclassified the trailer without specialist review, sold it as complete, and attempted to add a use restriction afterward. Continuing the rescission case would spend estate funds to reverse a lawful sale caused by the company's own procedure. He directed Valerie to withdraw the petition. Wynn Estate Services would reimburse Raymond's reasonable legal and conservation expenses from its professional errors coverage, not from the deceased owner's heirs. The company would issue a correction stating that Raymond had disclosed every clue after purchase and had not altered the trailer. Valerie signed the withdrawal in the museum room. She asked Raymond to remain after the others left. Through the glass wall, they could see Micah talking with Gabriel Ortega beside the trailer. "I thought you were holding out for a larger offer," she said. "I was holding out for the wall. That sounds noble now. It looked irresponsible when your shop couldn't store it." It was irresponsible until we moved it. Valerie nodded. He had not excused himself. That made it harder for her to defend what she had done. My company handles 12 estates a month, she said. We're measured by how quickly we turn uncertain property into settled numbers. The trailer was $450 because speed was worth more to us than another inspection. Until it wasn't. Until someone else paid for the inspection. She offered one correction beyond the legal settlement. Wynn Estate Services would fund independent historic review for vehicles and industrial equipment in future estates. Valerie asked Sandra to design the protocol. Raymond agreed to advise on transport bodies, but only as paid work through his shop. The museum's acquisition committee valued the transporter between $1.4 and $1.7 million based on its direct association with the Arden prototype, documented Le Mans use, original structure, and unique crew inscriptions. The figure came from specialist comparisons and insurer review. It was not guaranteed auction cash. The museum offered Raymond $55 million plus a 3-year conservation contract for Cole Mobile Fabrication. The transporter would remain beside the Arden GT-1. Its farm conversion would be stabilized, not erased. The number would be revealed through selected floor windows. The names would remain on the original wall under filtered light. The families would approve their biographies. Raymond did not accept immediately. Martin reviewed the acquisition agreement line by line. The first draft gave the museum authority to return the transporter to its 1958 presentation. Raymond marked that sentence. Returning suggested a single correct appearance and gave a future director room to remove the farm layer. Sandra replaced it with conserve all documented periods while prioritizing legibility of the 1958 competition use. The second draft credited the Arden racing team. Micah asked for the 3 mechanics by name in the contract, not only on a panel that could change. The museum added Frank Dyer, Luis Ortega, and Samuel Boone, followed by language covering other crew identified through research. The third issue was access. Raymond did not want a purchaser to place the trailer in storage after 1 season. The museum agreed to a minimum 10-year paired display beside the prototype, subject only to conservation rotation. If separated, each object's label had to state where the other was and why it was absent. Valerie's withdrawn claim still appeared in the title record. Her company filed a release and paid for a quiet title order so the museum would not inherit uncertainty. The order identified the asset by state trailer number, Hartwell plate, frame dimensions, and current photographs. No one could later claim the valuable history belonged to a different legal object than the $450 trailer Raymond bought. These details delayed payment by 3 weeks. Raymond tolerated the delay because he had learned what haste cost. He and Micah spent an hour alone with the transporter after closing. The boy walked from the tie-downs to the patched corner and back. This object had been intended as their summer project. Selling it felt different from selling a commodity. It also offered security Raymond could not create by keeping it in a rented shop. "What do you think?" Raymond asked. Micah read the acquisition conditions again. "They keep the farm paint?" "Most of it." "And the names stay where they are?" "Yes." "Can we work on it?" "For 3 years. If we do the job right." Micah handed back the paper. "Then, we're not giving it away." Raymond accepted. The payment cleared the legal debt, replaced the compressor, funded Micah's dental work, and allowed Raymond to buy the shop building from his landlord, rather than keep renting. He put part of the money into retirement and part into education accounts. The 3-year contract let him hire 2 apprentices from Samuel Boone's vocational school. Buying the building changed one detail Raymond cared about more than the new office. He removed the leaking steel container from the rear yard and poured a covered materials pad with proper drainage. Micah helped paint location numbers on the racks. Nothing stored there was rare. The sheets were ordinary aluminum waiting to become food truck walls, access panels, and repair patches. Raymond treated their labels with the same care as the transporter evidence, because documentation was not a ceremony reserved for million-dollar objects. It was how a small shop kept promises when memory became crowded. He also paid Ruthie for every extra hour she had recorded but never billed while the dispute was uncertain. The first check Raymond wrote after closing was not for the building or compressor. It reimbursed Micah's college savings for the conservation costs Raymond had borrowed from it. He showed the entry to his son. "You didn't ask before you used that money," Micah said. "I should have." The apology mattered because Raymond had spent months insisting that ownership and permission were not flexible. He could not teach that lesson to a company and exempt himself at home. Micah accepted the restored balance, then asked if a small amount could remain in the project account for archival trips. Raymond agreed. The boy had begun considering museum conservation as a career. Raymond did not tell him it was impractical or insist he inherit the fabrication shop. A legacy chosen freely was stronger than one assigned. Conservation took 11 months. Raymond straightened the ramp only enough to make it structurally safe. He fabricated hidden supports behind the corroded lower edge, rather than replacing the signed wall. Micah helped create a removable lighting rail that revealed the number 27 without heating the old paint. Valerie visited twice under the new review program. On her second visit, she brought a young estate appraiser who began to call a dent damage. Valerie stopped him. "Describe it first," she said. "Decide what it means later." Raymond heard her but kept working. At the permanent unveiling, the Arden prototype and its transporter stood together for the first time in more than 60 years. The race car looked fast even while still. The trailer looked like work. Its ramp held scratches from loading. Its wall held names. Its white farm paint remained across most of the exterior, with a narrow blue conservation window near the lower edge. The museum projected archive film showing the prototype rolling down the same ramp at Le Mans. The old frame shook. Frank Dyer guided the wheels. Luis Ortega carried a brake drum. Samuel Boone leaned into the cockpit. For a few seconds, the men on the screen stood beside the marks their hands had left in the room. Micah watched twice. When the crowd moved toward refreshments, he stayed near the signed wall. "How did everyone forget what it was?" he asked. Raymond looked at the polished race car, then at the transporter that had carried it across an ocean and back. "They remembered the car," he said. "They forgot the people who carried it there." Micah took a small work light from the conservation cart. He aimed it at the three names, not the race number. One by one, Frank, Luis, and Samuel appeared beneath the old gray coating. Raymond switched off the brighter museum lamp. The perfect silver car faded into the dim hall. The names inside the weathered trailer remained lit, written by three mechanics who had never expected anyone to preserve the wall.